In this review of the week's news, the Isaac Theatre Royal welcomes thousands, teens say goodbye to their head of hair for a good cause, and it's nearly time for some new faces at ORANA. Kia ora, welcome to CTV News Week in Review. I'm Jared McCulloch. It's a step forward for some fast food workers this week, with plans to scrap zero-hour contracts. Some good news for many workers in the fast food industry, with one of the country's largest outfits dropping zero-hour contracts. Pressure has been mounting for the last few months, with a number of employees rallying together to get change within the industry. And the Unite union organiser for the South Island says he's happy with the decision, a step forward to guaranteed hours.
It's really good. We've been saying all along that these companies can make these changes, they can give workers security, and yeah, with restaurant brands coming back and giving workers that, it shows that that's possible.
Under the zero-hour contracts, staff weren't guaranteed sustained work hours, needing to be available to work at any time, often at short notice. And he says employees are pleased with the result.
People are really stoked. It's been a big thing we've been campaigning on for some time. So we've been talking about zero-hour contracts for over a year. It's been getting a really good response from people. So yeah, to have that finally ticked off in one aspect of the fast food industry is really exciting for a lot of people. And for other members in other stores, it makes them excited as well, because they can see that it works, that being in the union and fighting for things achieves results. So yeah, it's a really good. People are pretty excited at the moment.
But it will only be a thing of the past for some fast food workers, with restaurant brands who own KFC, Starbucks and Pizza Hut treating the contracts for good. But it's still not over yet. 2 months ago, these Wendy's restaurant workers had enough, protesting against the contracts and asking for better pay and staff hours.
Not good enough really for the workers on minimum wage. You can come to work week to week and you never know what you have any hours.
And Peterson says Wendy's is just one that they're focusing on.
At this point, Burger King, McDonald's and Wendy's are the three companies in the fast food industry that we're in dispute with. KFC or restaurant brands came back and signed that off, so we've done with there. So we're going to keep going for all these fast food companies until we've removed zero-hour contracts from the industry as a whole.
He says it could take time for the burger chain to come up with a result, even though other restaurants have jumped on board.
Well, they'll wait as long as it takes for Wendy's to come back with something that's fair. Wendy's has been saying it's not possible to do it. This deal with KFC and Pizza Hut shows that it is possible for these businesses to operate in that way. So the Unite Union's going to keep fighting for it and keep pushing until we get a deal that respects workers and gives people better security at work. It's
not understood yet what the new contracts will look like, but he says it's likely staff will get a better working roster to make hours more regular for workers. And he says the fight for change at the other stores is far from over, with more protests likely to be on the cards in the next few weeks.
We're going to keep on fighting until all the other companies come into line and give workers a fair deal.
So there's still a way to go yet, but Restaurant Brands says their contracts will disappear by July this year. Jared McCulloch, CTV News. Thousands of Canterburyans poured through the doors of the Isaac Theatre Royal this week to get an up-close look at the new historic theatre.
Beverly Stewart first visited the Isaac Theatre Royal nearly 70 years ago, when she was just a child. The 77-year-old is back today to get a first-hand look at the freshly renovated theatre.
Just absolutely marvellous.
Beverly's one of many who took the opportunity to visit for a personal tour of the building. Each person left in awe at the extent of their restoration work after the 2011 February earthquake badly damaged the theatre.
I think you feel like you're in another world somehow.
The steady crowd of theatre-goers growing by the minute, much to the delight of the Theatre Royal's chief executive, Neil Cox. He oversaw the restoration work and is now seeking extra funds to help keep the theatre open for the next 2 years.
We always said to the public in Christchurch that we'd build the theatre. It cost $40 million to do that, but we had to borrow significant amounts to make that number. So there was about $2 million in commercial loans. We have to service those. It costs roughly about $150,000 a year to service those.
The aim of the Take the Stage campaign is to raise $150,000 needed to service that loan. The Christchurch Earthquake Appeal Trust will then match that amount. Before the doors opened this morning, nearly $100,000 had already been raised. With 10 days of the campaign left to go, Neil's hoping donations will pour in thick and fast.
This is the second open day and the last one raised about $7,000, so we feel pretty confident that based on the crowd today we'll get close to that number as well.
Front of house manager Kevin Knowles spent the morning leading groups to some of the best seats in the theatre.
Well, this is the gods, for the gallery, as they used to call it. We used to climb up here. I think it was 99 steps. But nowadays you can ride up in a nice lift.
This former actor turned staff member very much enjoying being a part of the Theatre Royal team.
It's a great theatre and it's really marvellous to be back, and it's being patronised tremendously.
Seeing this painstakingly restored dome up close, a highlight of the tour.
It's beautiful, yeah, absolutely. It's a credit to the people who've done it all up. And
I just love the dome, I do.
Everyone who comes to the theatre and sees the theatre, they're just overwhelmed, and they just really feel that they're going back in time or going back to the theatre from 10 years ago.
Around 90,000 Cantabrians have watched shows in the Isaac Theatre Royal since it reopened. Tomorrow night, the Phantom of the Opera launches, one of the biggest performances so far. The Phantom himself can't wait for when the curtains open, his first performance at the Isaac Theatre Royal.
You can see it there, my home, my space. I'm just really excited to be in here and attacking this show. Full noise in a brand new theatre. It's not often you get to experience a new space.
These theatre fans likely to be filling seats on the opening night. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
It's the most expensive enclosure ever built at ORANA Wildlife Park, and soon the park's new gorilla attraction will be open for all to see. It's a first in New Zealand and it'll make itself at home here in Canterbury. ORANA Wildlife Park's development of this gorilla enclosure is well underway, with the Great Ape Centre starting work back in July last year, a project costing the zoo $6 million to construct. And a member of the ORANA team says it's the biggest venture in the animal park's history.
This is the most ambitious project we've ever done and likely the biggest project that we'll ever do, so it's immensely exciting. Our whole team are really excited about it. It's fabulous to see the exhibit progress so quickly.
It's been a massive project in the making, starting back in 2007 as an idea to house 3 western lowland gorillas, being transferred from Sydney's Taronga Zoo as a breeding program to protect the endangered species. But with the earthquakes putting the idea on hold, it's now a busy site seeing an all-male cast soon to be enjoying this new space.
We'll be initially holding 3 bachelors as part of our role as part of the program. So our role will very much be supporting the program by holding offspring, if you like, and also educating the public on the plight of these animals.
It's based half a kilometre down from the wildlife park, and today it was a big job lifting in glass panels for the viewing room of the building. But it's not your typical sheet of glass, this being given the gorilla-proof tick of approval.
It's toughened laminated glass. Essentially what that means is that it's gone through our furnace at our processing facility here in Christchurch. So it's 5 or 6 times stronger than normal glass that you would see in houses, as well as it's been laminated in 2 sheets. So very thick and 6 metres square, so very big.
James says it's been an interesting concept for the Christchurch Glass Company, tasked to make up these massive glass panes, each weighing over 1/4 of a tonne. The glass is 23 millimetres thick, with it being capable of enduring an angry outburst from the gorilla, meaning it can withstand a run-up attack to the glass. After it's been put in, there's only a few other jobs to be done, with the project manager saying the facility is around 85% complete.
We're really down to after the glass here today, we're down to painting, decorating, carpet down and commissioning. There's a lot of landscaping presently being done, a lot of planting. There's in each of the orangutan and the gorilla exhibits, there's around about 1,500 plants that are being planted right now.
At first it'll be the 3 brothers' home, but they'll need to prepare themselves for some new flatmates later on, with orangutans making this place their own too.
So orangutans will arrive about 1 year later, so the facility will first be home to gorillas and then it'll be home to orangs about a year later. So we'll work with the regional breeding coordinator for orangs as well to determine which specific animals come here. There's potentially 3 orangutans that would also come to ORANA, but that's yet to be determined through the program.
It won't be long until crowds will gather to see the giant animals up close, with construction expected to be finished up next month, and the gorillas making their way from Sydney soon after. Jared McCulloch, CTV News. Still to come, how good is your local MP?
When you need to know what's happening in your region of Canterbury, join me, Chris Lynch, for CTV News First at 5, weeknights from 5, right here on your local channel, CTV.
Computer not working? Replace or repair? DIY or get a technician? Looking for parts? Thinking of upgrading? Need accessories? You've got questions, we've got answers. Global PC.
The preparation, the devotion, the fearlessness, the intensity.
Runway model management. First impressions are everything.
Interiors, made with care, made for you.
Join Graham Sinclair and the team at Gone Fishin' as they bring you great stories, fishing tips and beautiful scenery. Gone Fishin', Friday night at 8:30, right here on CTV.
Welcome back. A new solar venture has found a way to combat ever-increasing power bills, but is it worth it? Another way to get an everyday necessity. There's a new addition to this household in Christchurch with the installation of a new solar power system. 10 panels are being put up at this St Albans house, but what makes it different is it wasn't bought as a one-off payment, with this property being the first to go prepay. And the chief executive says it gives people more options for those wanting to go green.
This is a huge step forward in terms of power use and utilisation for Canterbury. It allows the whole region now to make a statement about a commitment to climate change and reducing our impact on the environment, and looks in more affordable prices for power longer term.
When you think of electricity sources in Canterbury, you may think of something as big as a hydro dam, but here the power comes straight from your roof, and he says it makes sense in terms of cost.
It's a much more economic way to install solar is to install solar on someone's home, because you generate the power exactly where you need it at the moment you need it.
It's the first house in Canterbury to get the panels connected and run off this system, similar to other power companies around the country, except they're going solar. And he says it's easier for residents to take up the solar aspect, saying buying the system upfront can be too expensive.
85% of New Zealanders want to go solar but can't afford. The upfront capital cost is just too high. With Solar Zero and this particular program, you can get cheaper power today rather than investing upfront in prepaying power for the next 10 to 15 years.
However, a recent study from Otago University shows people choosing to use solar power is on the up as installation costs come down. And the Sustainable Energy Association of New Zealand believes the cost of installing a solar panel system is becoming more available to everyone rather than the wealthier communities, meaning more of these systems will be put up. But Booth says it still isn't affordable for all.
It's really up to the homeowner in terms of their budget and what they can afford at a particular moment in time. Many families can't afford $10,000 or $15,000 for a system, so it's far better for them to lock in an affordable price today.
But choosing this system doesn't give full power coverage. At this stage, the panels can only be used throughout the day, meaning they'll have to go back on the grid during the evening and still pay 2 power bills. And Booth says it comes down to the price of battery storage.
Right now, solar can meet your daytime power needs. Over the next 3 to 5 years, battery storage will become far more economic than it is today, and that will allow you to lock in a fairer price for solar-generated power across the day.
It'll be some time yet until these panels can be used as a main source, with batteries expected to be available by the end of the year. So it's not solo for solar just yet. Jared McCulloch, CTV News. This week, CASHMERE high school students raised 3 times more money than estimated for leukemia research. It's lunchtime at this Christchurch high school, with hundreds of students watching on to see their classmates shave their hair for charity. Around 60 Year 13 students took up the challenge to Shave for a Cure, fundraising to support those living with leukemia and other blood-related illnesses in New Zealand. And it's been put together by 2 young leaders working with their year group to make it all happen.
We've been going around to assemblies, we've been just talking about it all the time, having meetings, throwing in the notices, just keeping the idea in the minds of the people and then just sharing the ideas. When people pull out, they go, don't really want to do it. But other people, they dive in. They go, yeah, this sounds awesome.
There are around 10,000 people living with blood cancer in New Zealand, with lymphoma being most common among 15 to 24-year-olds. And the Deputy Head Boy says it's important to raise money for this cause, with it being on a personal level in the CASHMERE school community.
Just recently, the head girl, one of her best friends, was diagnosed. So it's quite a real thing, and we've had about 4 parents in our time at CASHMERE have passed away from cancer-related causes. So it's a real thing for all of us, and this is just one of the ways that we can express what it means.
The school was aiming to raise $10,000, but now they've more than doubled that number, with the team currently holding the national top spot for the amount of donations this year.
We hit 15,000, we said 20,000 would be nice, and now we're at 26,000, so it's a great feeling.
1,500 Kiwis are signed up throughout the country, raising a total of $800,000, with Shave for a Cure hoping to reach their target of $2 million. But this hasn't been the only event organised by the students. They've been collecting around the city with buckets in hand and having a number of collection days at school.
We had a lot of Loose Change Fridays. People went around on Fridays collecting money. Obviously it's Mufti Day. Lots of emails going out, Facebook event, to keep people in the loop for what's been going on.
The boys are getting their hair shaved too, with mixed feelings about their hair coming off.
I'm just excited. I'm just ready for it to go.
I'm absolutely terrified. I've been the last 3 or 4 days, I kept telling my girlfriend and telling my friends at swimming what's it going to look like when it's gone, and I'm so nervous about it.
After watching the rest of the students, it's now time for the 2 to have their turn.
I can feel the wind right now. I can feel it. Oh, what? Oh, there's nothing there.
It feels pretty weird. I'm pretty nervous to see what it looks like.
And their reaction?
So much eyebrow, not enough hair.
Oh my God. Whoa.
But the boys don't mind their new style, knowing they've helped others around the country. MCCULLOCH, CTV News. The general election seems like a distant memory, but since then, how have your local MPs been performing? Marcus Gibbs decided to find out.
120 members of Parliament representing New Zealanders and making decisions on our behalves. Politicians. Every 3 years we choose who we want to represent us. But in Christchurch, just how well are they performing? CTV News quizzed the constituents of Nationals' Jerry Brownlee and Labour's Megan Woods about their representatives.
I can't say on camera.
Not sure how effective he is, but he certainly does have a bit of a name.
Never seen her.
Really?
Yes, someone Woods, isn't it?
She's always getting noticed and, she's prominent.
See him on the news for a bit, but that's about it. I don't even know her, and I don't or him. I never see them. So they're not very good, are they?
It wasn't long before I met Jerry Brownlee's biggest fan.
Love them to bits.
As Canterbury's Earthquake Recovery Minister, he's at the forefront of the rebuild and has a large presence in the city, one that hasn't gone unnoticed by Trish.
And he's always good, he does what you ask him to do, and he's behind the rebuild in Christchurch well and truly, no matter what other people think.
The Avonhead resident has been swept off her feet by his work in the community.
He's always consistent as far as I'm concerned, and he takes all the knocks that he gets on the chin, fairly and squarely. Nothing phases him, and that's what we want from an MP.
Only one person had a few words of advice for the MPs.
Probably take on board what other people's opinions are and actually give them more credits, I suppose.
Other than needing to show their faces more in their local community, Megan Woods and Jerry Brownlee seem to be doing okay in the eyes of the people of Avonhead. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
Well, still to come, an update on the city's rebuild.
With all the latest innovations in the world of technology, Shift has everything you need to stay informed and in the know. Shift, 2:15 on Monday, right here on CTV.
Opus is recreating the heart of Canterbury. From large-scale projects to commercial buildings. Your design, your vision. Opus.
Steel, the roof of New Zealand.
Diversity. No deposit. Instant finance. Convenience. Open 7 days. Austin Motor Company.
Drive It showcases the new arrivals to the motoring world, comparing and testing the latest models to discover which one is the best. Drive It, Sunday afternoons at 2:30, only on CTV.
Welcome back. Good news for tourists. Restart Mall will remain open for another year, but one retailer is not happy.
It's the end of an era for one Restart Mall retailer.
It's quite a different ball game post-earthquake retail-wise.
Plush clothing shop owner Carolyn Barker was one of the first to sign on to the Restart Mall dream back in 2011. After 16 years in Cashel Street, she didn't hesitate to open shop in the central city following the earthquakes. But her high-end clothing store is struggling. She says high rents and a lack of paying customers are forcing her to close up shop. Visitors to her store treat it like a museum, commenting on how nice her clothing is before moving on. She says it's nothing like High Street, where she thrived before the earthquakes.
It was magic down there. It was the fashion precinct and it was a real destination.
Many of the mall's other retailers are happy with the rent. They say it matches foot traffic coming into their stores. One of the more successful, a hair salon catering for locals as well as cruise ship visitors.
The rents are fine, we're doing great. We have cruise ships coming through and we mainly have people that are just starting their journey through Christchurch or just about to leave.
Restart the Heart Trust chairman John Suckling says the demand for a spot in the mall is high. Local sporting goods store champions of the world is already set to replace Plush.
A lot of tenants understand that the rents are quite low, and they're much lower than it'll be in the new buildings.
Restart moved to a new spot last year to allow property owners to rebuild, but the advantage of the previous location was its close proximity to Ballantyne's and its foot traffic. Carolyn Barker says since the move, visitor numbers to her store have dropped off.
It's gone down for me, yeah. Gets worse every year.
Tourists quizzed about their spending at Restart don't seem too light in the pocket.
Just browsing, but we might get a few souvenirs on the way. So.
We're going back to the UK, and if I find something that I like, then I'll buy it to take back with me.
While Carolyn's prices start at $100 for a shawl and range to $600 for a jacket, clothing store Hunters and Collectors is priced a lot cheaper, but is still struggling with the amount of local visitors to the store.
Definitely turnover's down, and it's just due to foot traffic, really.
Andrew Judkins is confident as the new multi-million-dollar retail and office developments open in the central city, more people will flood to Restart.
A lot of these businesses were in an existing building in the city pre-earthquake, and beside them there might have been an office building with 1,000 people working in it. So you've lost all those people, you've lost all the hospitality staff that worked in hotels, bars.
The mall was originally designed to bring people back into the CBD until major developments are built. Several of these will be ready for customers by next year, and the need for Restart could soon disappear. It's likely the mall could dissolve by late 2016, and these container shops could be sold off.
Restart was always a transition where we're moving from the earthquake, where it was all red zone, through to new buildings going up.
Hunters and Collectors days at the malls are already numbered. The team plans to move back to their High Street store once its earthquake damage is repaired.
We'll move back there within 6 to 12 months of this being filmed.
Meanwhile, Carolyn is preparing to have a short break before moving back into retail, somewhere with cheap rent and high amounts of foot traffic. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
A lot went on in the business world this week. Warren Head explains.
I'm Warren Head from headliner.co.nz. One of the stocks that we cover on Headliner quite a bit is Restaurant Brands. So I took particular interest today to see that the Chief Executive was commenting earlier this morning about the company accepting the Unite Union's request, if you can put it that way, for the company to reconsider 0 hours for their workers across their chain. What has been happening in the fast food industry is that workers would be available for work, but they wouldn't have any guaranteed hours per week. If you extend that argument a little bit further, I think across the whole retail sector, there'll be a lot of retailers who will be thinking pretty hard about what this might mean if this particular project on behalf of the union is taken up in other places and ends up in some form of regulation. But that might be taking things a bit too quickly so far. But already we're told in a union statement that McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's are at this stage not making the same move that Restaurant Brands is making in assuring their workers at least some certainty of how many hours they'll work per week. Now, on the retail sector today, out came Michael Hill's 9 months results. Pretty good for New Zealand, up about almost 5% in New Zealand dollar terms across his store chain here. Not so good in Australia. Things were down about 2% over there, which knocked the revenue back down to 3.5% growth rate overall, but going nicely too in the United States and not too bad in Canada. Michael Hill opened 11 stores in the last quarter and ceased 2, so he's now got 287 stores out there, and that chain is clearly one of the best managed in the business, so if they can't do well, God help the rest, you might say. Well, on to oil, one of our favourite topics on the program. Oil prices took a big dive last night. The UK oil, that's called Brent, the WTI, which is West Texas Intermediate, they both fell about 4.5% and 5.5% respectively. So we'll see that feeding through into world oil prices over the next few days, and if the currency holds up at these current high levels, we should see that translate through to the pump prices. This is a result of the US stockpile of oil reaching a 14-year high. In the context of oil, I was pleased to see that New Zealand Oil and Gas, a homegrown business, is participating in the Patiki 4H well, which was turned on this week. In oil terms, they've done some production and flow testing, and they stabilised the flow rate at 34,000 barrels a day. 34,000. This is a big well, as a step-out well in anyone's terms. So good on them for that.
And that is CTV News Week in Review. I'm Jared McCulloch. Have a great weekend.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.